Welcome back to Faith, Frauds, and Falsehoods, where we explore the various cults and religions of the world. Tonight, we're continuing our discussion about the Institute in Basic Life Principles, the IBLP. We're going to talk about the basic seminar tonight, so don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to help other people find us.
Yeah, and as always, remember this is our personal opinions, not those of our churches or employers. So, Matt, let's talk about the basic seminar.
All right.
What does the term basic seminar mean?
It's the basic. It's the start. So he started, as we talked about in the history, doing these seminars, which covered his teachings, basically.
Right. Yeah. His guide to self-realization, self-improvement, relational improvement, all of the above, right? This was done through this seminar format. So through these and some of their other programs, they taught on a bunch of different topics, right? From personal finance and time management to conflict resolution and healthy relationships, right? So they covered a whole bunch of stuff. The basic seminar, kind of the very first level of the system, was there's a cause and effect relationship in all areas of life, right? If you're struggling with something, there's a cause, right? If you do something, there's going to be an effect later on, right? These are things that we kind of already understand, right? Cause and effect is a part of reality.
I feel like he took it kind of into the God has a big fly swatter mode.
He did. You know? He did.
Because you did this, God's going to swat you here. And look, I've heard some of that teaching in the church too. And I've always kind of thought, man, it sounds like we're teaching contradiction things here before. Where, because if you do this, God's going to get you like this. And like I said, it's like God with a fly swatter mode. God's not a big guy with a fly swatter up in the air,
Nope.
But that's kind of what he taught. You do this thing, then God's going to get you this way.
Yep. So he taught actually that a lot of the conflicts that he discusses in the basic seminar are really still youth conflicts that were never resolved.
What do you mean by never resolved?
So when he's talking to adults, right, he's talking about these are things that you struggled with in your youth that you never fixed, right?
Okay.
When we get to the causes, right, those are things that can be fixed, right, to get rid of the results, right? And so you're dealing with things in your adult life that happened as a kid.
Can you give us an example?
Or he didn't go into examples, so I'm trying to think of something.
This sounds very similar to Scientology, right?
It's very similar to Scientology. The negative Ingrams, right? If you go back and listen to those episodes. But things like debt, right? Debt is a big one, right? Generally, people start to deal with money when they're young, right? Not children necessarily, but youth, teens, early 20s, right? You really start to deal with money, and you can find yourself in debt really quickly if you're not careful.
Oh yeah, listen, I used to get paid on Friday, but I would want a pizza on Wednesday. So what I'd do is I'd write a check for a pizza on Wednesday.
Yep. And knowing that it wouldn't clear until Friday.
Well, I would hope. But what businesses used to do, and they were sued for this, and I got a settlement check a little while back for this for $12, is what they would do is they'd apply my checks first and then my deposits second. So they'd apply the checks, then the penalties for the overdraft fees.
Yeah.
Then they deposit my pay in there, and that way I had to pay fees. So that $25 pizza would cost me $60.
Right.
But that was something I practiced as a kid because I was taught that. And since I practiced that as a kid, I took that on into adulthood. And that's something I had to break later of you should never overdraft your bank account. But I use that as a financial tool
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a credit card, so I overdraft my bank account almost every week.
Yep. Yep. So
Sounds insane to talk
like
about
that.
it now. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. He talks a lot about wisdom versus reason in the seminar, and explains responses to conflicts coming from human reason results often in more conflict, anxiety, and anger, whereas responses with God's principles through wisdom brings patience, peace, and gratefulness.
The opposite of what Wesley taught.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Which is, well, we can dig into. Maybe we'll have another teachings episode when we're all done with these. We'll just keep going. I enjoy talking about the theological things. But so he talks about these different levels of conflict.
Okay.
And he talks about the surface problems to start with, the visible actions, right? The things that you can see in my life that are a problem, right? So dishonesty, profanity, broken promises, disrespect, debt, arguing, bad habits, et cetera, right? He even goes so far as to say debt is a hidden judgment of God, because financial problems are symptoms of deeper problems, which can be the case.
Yeah.
It's not always, but it can be the case. So these are the surface problems, right? And the surface causes, which are attitudes, inferiority, so fear of being lesser, anger, fear, rebellion, envy and jealousy, boredom, guilt, and frustration. He talks about as far as inferiority goes, the way that we dress tells other people what we think about the way God made us and how we want them to treat us. Coming back to that, almost back to the kind of a little bit of the holiness side of things, but more to the guruism. If you want people to like you, dress like they want you to dress. Right?
Yeah, I believe that's a fairly widespread teaching well outside of Guruism in traditional Christianity.
Yep.
Dressing for modesty and etc.
Well, but he's not talking about dressing for modesty, right?
Well,
he's
he definitely
talking
taught
about
a lot about dressing modestly, though, and how the consequences of not dressing modestly. And then you mentioned there about how we want them to treat us. You dress how you want people to treat you. Dressing immodestly, and this is where people have a problem with that, and I definitely see that, is that he taught that if you dress immodestly, you deserve to be treated wrongly.
Yep. Which is
that makes the victim the cause. I don't remember.
Right.
There you go. Yep. You're blaming the victim there. That's ridiculousness. Yep. So that if a woman was to dress immodestly and some man does something horrible to her or touches her inappropriately or whatever, that she's somehow responsible because how she dressed, which is crazy.
Yep. Yeah.
But that is something that's taught in a lot of places, and that was definitely a big part of his teaching and a big part of his later sexual abuse of his own people.
Yep. That it was. So then he gets into the root problems, right, which are character problems, bitterness, focus on temporal values, greed, and moral impurity. And then he talks about the root causes, which is a wrong response to God. Specifically, the big one that he focuses on is resisting God's grace and violating scriptural principles, in which he outlines the scriptural principles in his seminar as these are the 7 things that every person in the world must build their life around in order to be successful.
And seen. Buy my next book. Come to my next seminar.
Right? Yeah.
And that's what we're going to do next ourselves. We're fixing to go next. We're going to teach you the 7 principles.
Specifically about them. Yep.
All righty.